morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are streaming from. This is the East, Central, and South Africa Microsoft Excel for brought to you by Crisp Excel Training and Consulting. We are corporate and individual trainers on advanced Excel, HR analytics, project management, and Office 365 and others. Here are our partners in Kenya and elsewhere. Our presenter today is none other but Bernard. Bernard Obeng. Bernard is a renowned Microsoft MVP, data analyst, financial modeler, Excel, and Power BI, and also another. And I'll show you his book later on. His areas of expertise is financial modeling, corporate training, business analytics. Here are some of his social media, which you should be, if you are not following, you should follow. Number one, I'll send you this social media handle so that you can follow him. He is on LinkedIn, on Amazon, one of the best books on data modeling with Excel. He has a very, very interesting YouTube channel called Finex Skill Hub, and also a website to his training and his company called Finex Skills Hub. So I'll send you these links so that at least you can go get, buy from him the book, and also subscribe to his channel, and also get some training from him. The topic of today is Power Query, Power Pivot, Power BI, and PowerPoint. How do they all combine in Excel? So Bernard, are you there?
Hi, Crispo, I'm here.
Yeah, so welcome. You can take over, I'll stop sharing. And then if there's something, I hope I've not missed anything about you, but if there's something that you want to add, you can still add, and then you can continue. We can continue.
Okay, Crispo, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I think you've covered almost everything. Essentially, very passionate about you using Excel, Power BI to help people save time and then add value to their reporting. So this afternoon, we want to do something quite interesting. So I'll be walking through how the regular tools that we use, that is Excel, can combine with PowerPoint and Power BI. But we mostly be staying in Excel because most of the tools are in Excel. And then once we're able to complete our dashboard, we would try and see how we can combine it with Power BI and then later to PowerPoint. So the case study is a case study that I'm sure everybody would easily identify. It is a case study on a personal finance dashboard. So nothing at all. You can create this on your own and then use it to monitor how you are spending and how you are earning, right? I've shared a workbook, so maybe after you can watch the video and then practice along. I'm going to take this very slowly. It's a very basic case, so I'm sure everybody will be able to identify. We'll walk through all the steps. So I'm going to share my screen. If you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. And please give me feedback if my video is stable. If not, I can go off and then.
It's okay.
So,
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so I chose this topic. Let's our powers combine. If you grew up in the 90s, this is one popular cartoon series. In fact, when I was watching it in recent times, I realized it was a bit more deeper than we thought. It was a cartoon series on how to protect the environment. So our main characters, Kwame and his team. Kwame was from Ghana, and then we had other people from different continents. So basically, when they got into trouble, what they would do is they will let their powers combine. So earth, fire, wind, water, and then heart. Then they create the superhero Captain Planet, who comes in to save the situation. So if there's a mess, he comes in to clean the mess and all those things. So that is inspired by Captain Planet. So I'm sure most of you who grew up in the 90s already know. Crispo, I don't know if Captain Planet was shown in Kenya.
I don't remember seeing it. I remember seeing Superwoman, but I don't remember seeing Captain Planet.
Okay. So that's Captain Planet, and that's where the inspiration is from. Now, I think for most of us, when we go into Excel, we are very conversant with pivot tables because it's a very popular tool. It helps us summarize. Sometimes we use it to create dashboards and all those things. Fantastic. But there are other tools that I'm hoping we can expose ourselves to. So I'm going to go through these one by one. The first one is Power Query, right? So Power Query helps us to connect to data from many sources, right? So think of data in folders on the web, CSV files, PDF. Even in recent times, you can even connect to pictures, okay, and extract your tables from there, right? Beyond just connecting to tables, it allows you to shape, modify, okay, and then draw dimension and fact tables. I'll explain that to be able to analyze your data very well. Power Query is in Excel, same is in Power BI, right? So that is what makes it possible to create something in Excel and then smoothly transition into Power BI. So that's the first power. So you see that ring. The second power is Power Pivot. So for most of us, Power Pivot is that hidden tool. It's not enabled by default, but you can enable it if you are using Excel 2016 and beyond. Prior to this version, it was an add-in. So if you are using 2016 or later, I'll show you a way to just activate it. But what does it do? So if you have more than one table that you are analyzing and you have information from the other one, or index match, you can use Power Pivots to connect these two tables, okay, create what we call a data model. So that if you create a pivot table and you are using about 6 tables, all these 6 tables can feed into one single pivot table without manually looking up information. All your tables sit at one place. As long as you can identify the relevant columns, you can connect them and then you do your analysis. A very powerful feature. Now, one thing is that once you connect to Power Pivot in Excel, you have access to DAX, data analysis expressions, and then you can also use cube functions, right? Again, you're going to explore that in this case study. Then there is pivot tables. Everybody knows pivot tables. It helps us summarize data, right? It's been around for a very long time. But the truth is that if you build your pivot tables, okay, on the data model, which is created by Power Pivot, you have more options when it comes to analyzing your data. So that's the third power. Now, we all know Power BI, which came early 2006, 2016, I think. So Power BI has been around 2016, 2017. It's been around for almost 7-8 years now. So it is the business intelligence and data analytics tool from Microsoft, a bit more enhanced, allows us to create reports, collaborate online, a bit more enhanced on the visual side. We can even bring in custom visuals, collaborate with our colleagues online and all that, right? So Power BI, they say is the future. I believe is the future. It allows you to do more. Even in these times, it sits on Fabric, which brings in more of the data science machine learning tools. For those of you who want to make data analytics and business intelligence a career path, Power BI offers a good start. Then you can build on with the other tools. So that is the fourth part. So it allows us to create interactive visualizations and reports. Then good old PowerPoint. Okay, so PowerPoint is also there. What does it help us do? Very, very effective when it comes to presenting your findings in a more powerful way, right? So save your audience all the details. You can bring in the key charts and visuals. Now, when you combine this with Power BI these days, you can even bring in the slices, okay, while you present, right? So the question is, what can we cook with all these? First power, second power, third power, fourth, fifth, right? This is what we'll try and focus on. We create with Power Query. We connect using the data model with Power Pivots. We summarize with pivot tables, export to Power BI, and then present in PowerPoint. That is the path that we are going to go on. Right. Now, I have this triangle just to give you an idea on why sometimes we move from Excel to Power BI and PowerPoint. Right. For most people, Excel is good enough. In fact, arguably is the most popular business tool. There are reasons we always want to move and then maybe go to Power BI, PowerPoint. Excel offers us flexible calculations and analysis, no two ways, right? But when it comes to collaboration and sharing, right, there's a certain limit there. Even though OneDrive and SharePoint allows us to share files smoothly, a better way to do it is using Power BI, right? So that's why we move to Power BI occasionally. Again, aside the collaboration online, we have enhanced visualization options and we are able to collaborate with our colleagues, embed it in apps and all those options, right? But why do you also move from PowerPoint? Sometimes we want to present what we have created in a more interactive way. Okay, so that is what will lead us to PowerPoint. Thankfully, I think 2 years ago, they added that feature that allows you to be able to take your final report, embed it, okay, as part of your PowerPoint, as a full presentation, or generate a link and put it in an existing one, right? So it looks like it goes from here and here. But in fact, when I was exploring this topic with the team, we came across something on how you can actually also embed Excel and PowerPoint together. It's possible, right? So you create a dashboard in Excel, you could actually copy the entire thing and embed in PowerPoint. You can still interact, but just that when you go into the projection mode, it doesn't allow the interaction. So all these allow us to work smoothly, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a case study, a very simple one, a personal finance case study. So basically, you create a budget and then you start spending and earning. We want to be able to compare the two using these tools, right? So I'm going to introduce the case study and then we'll walk through and then see. So now this is the case study that we have. So we have two tables, an actual table, okay, where we record the date we spend or earn, the transaction details, the category or accounts that we are spending from or we are earning into, and then the amount, right? A very simple. Sometimes we create it this way so that it's easy to enter data. Now, we are comparing this against another budget table. Very simple budget. It goes from January to December. Okay, so you have your expenses and your income lines under type, which has been grouped or rolled up another level into classes, right? So we have family, fixed, optional, recurring, and income. And then we have the categories, which is the granular level also here, right? So basically what we want to do is if before the beginning of the year, I set this budget, okay, where I put in, for the purposes of this case study, I've put in fixed numbers for each line. Okay, so for example, for food, you budget to spend 500 every month. Okay, so that is the kind of architecture that we have for the budget. This is what we are going to compare against actual, right? Obviously, you see there's a mismatch because even the orientation of the table, even though it's convenient for us, will not be very easy to analyze, right? Because first, you have this vertical orientation or longer orientation, and then you are now going to compare this with this horizontal layout. But with Power Query and Pivot, it is possible, right, to reorient the dimensions of these tables and make them agree so that you can put them together. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use Power Query and Power Pivot to first modify the layout, look up the various categories and class, okay, and then be able to create very simple pivot tables. So this is a very simple case study, and then we'll create this simple dashboard, right? I like this dashboard because it's straight to the point. So it tells us our net position, okay? It shows us our budget position. It shows us our variance. It also shows us which months we hit bottom and which months we're okay. So this is a spark line that has been used to layer the 12 months. Okay, we can filter, okay, to see just our income lines, okay, to see how much came in for income, and then you can also see our expenses. So it is these two that come together to give us the net position. Also, we are able to see and compare our budget and actuals for each line. Okay, so as an example, if I want to compare consultancy, I fixed X amount over the 12 months. The blue line is my actual to see when I did well, when I didn't do well, right? So all these are possible with these slices. And then we have top income and expenses, right? So if I select only income, I get my top income lines. If I select only expenses, I get my top expense lines. In the net position, it combines the two, okay? And then I have my top 2 income lines and my top 3 expense lines. We can also slice by month names, okay? So this is what we hope to achieve, and time permitting, when we are able to complete this, we'll see how we can quickly connect these tools together to create this. So before I start the step-by-step process, walk you through the schema, which is always very important. So you know that we are going to start with 2 tables, actual and budget. So this is what we're going to do. We'll convert them into tables, which is very important. It allows the data to be stored in a structured way. Then we'll connect this to Power Query. So I mentioned that Power Query allows us to connect the data, modify it, and shape. Not just cleaning alone, but if you are analyzing data, especially when you are creating a data model, there are 2 categories of tables you deal with. There is the table we call dimension tables, which helps you break down your calculations. Normally, it is from these tables that you create your slices. Okay, so the slices you saw there, that's allowed me to do month breakdown, type breakdown, category breakdown. Ideally, they should all come from a table that has a unique list of the items you want to break down by. So normally we call these dimension tables. So we'll draw the dimension tables, categories and dates, so that we can slice by category and then slice by date. Then we'll also draw our actual and budget tables. These are fact tables because we create measures from them, right? So Power Query would already set the stage to create these tables. And then once we are done, we'll transition to Power Pivot. Now, Power Pivot will help us create the data model. So in the data model, these tables, when they are created, are disconnected. Okay, so we need to find a way to connect them so they can speak to each other. We can use it in the pivot table and our analysis. So the data model will connect these 4 tables together. And then once we are done, we can now use one pivot table or several to be able to speak to all these connected tables. Then from there, we can be creative a bit, create our calculations with DAX, and then my favorites, do flexible calculations with Q functions. In fact, it's not every time we need Q functions. I will show you case studies when and when not to use them. Then after this, we'll bring in our charts, our slices, and then we create our dashboard, right? So this system loops. Okay, so if there's data updates in your original data, it runs through, right? So time permitting, this will create a data model which we can export to Power BI if we want to go into Power BI. And then from Power BI, we can transition to PowerPoint. So that is the story that we are going to put together in this session. So I'm going to start the start workbook, which has been shared. And then we'll go through this step by step. So this is the raw data. So the first thing I'm going to do is to convert this into a table, right? So shortcut is Control T, and then I'll click OK. So in my table design, I'm going to name this actual. Okay, so this is my actual table. we do it this way. So we go to Power Query, we can use the names easily to do our calculations. Then I'll come here, insert a table over here, and we are going to call this budget. Right, so these are the two tables we are going to use in our calculations. Now, next up is Power Query. So we are going to load the actual data into Power Query. So Power Query is usually under the Data tab, Get and Transform Data, right? If you are here, you can load from this table or range that you have created, right? In recent versions, you can also easily right-click, right, and then get data from table or range. So if I do this, it takes me straight to Power Query, right? So this is Power Query. This is where we are going to be shaping and drawing our tables. Normally, when you bring in your query, you need to check the data types. Okay, so I have my date here. So this has to be props. So I'll set that date to replace the step. So this is my description, my category, and then my amount, right? All formatted nicely. Now I need to bring in the budget, but I don't want to step out. So I'm going to take advantage of this formula or M code. Okay, so if you look closely, the reason we named the table is that the name is actually here, actual. So I'm going to copy this, okay? Then use it to create a new query. So I'll come to other sources and then launch a blank query. So I'll paste this, right? So here, I'm now going to use the name, change this from actual to budget. Okay, so this has now brought in my budget table. I'm going to name this budget. Okay, so we have something like this. Now, the first thing that we need to deal with is the orientation of the table, right? This is longer, this is wider, right? So to make it align, what we need to do is to unpivot, right? So unpivoting means we are collapsing the month columns, the last 12, okay, into rows, okay, so that we can have a longer table. No data is going to be lost here. So I'm going to highlight these first three, okay, right click and unpivot the other columns, okay, the ones that I have not selected, right? So this is going to give me category, class, type, and then my attribute, which is a date. So this, I'm going to make it a date, right? Now, if this is a date, then we need to properly format it. So if this is a date, it has to be formatted as a date. But you will notice that there's an error here because it's reading 23rd throughout. Okay, so what I should be doing is, because I already have the month and then the year, okay, I need this to read the beginning of each month. Okay, so in Power Query, I can do that by going to transform, okay, under format, I can add a prefix, right? So that prefix is going to be 01, okay, dash, so that I'm able to get the beginning of each date, right? So this is my dates. So I do this and I'm able to format it properly. I get the dates as I should, right? So this takes care of the dates. And then here, I'm going to name this amount, right? So this is our actual, and then this is our budget. Now, these are two fact tables, but the next thing that we need to do is to be able to draw our dimension table. Now, the category gives birth to class, and then class gives birth to type, right? So from these three columns, right, I can fairly get my labels for breaking down by category, by class, and by type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and then I'll reference, right? So when I reference, it maintains a link to the budget table and creates a copy. That's what referencing does. So I'll highlight the first three, 1, 2, 3, and then remove other columns. Okay. Then when I'm done, I will remove all the duplicates in here. So I'll right click this and remove all the duplicates. So this will now give me my category, class, and then my type, right? So this is our first dimension table. we name this category. Okay. Now, before we bring in our calendar table, we would have to pay attention to the amount section over here. You notice that we have income lines and expense lines, but the way it says now, all of them are positive numbers or absolute numbers. We need to be able to negate the expenses so that we can have our net position, our inflows and then our outflows, right? But we don't have anything to help us know whether category here is an expense or an income, right? Ideally, if we're doing this in regular Excel, we are going to look up the type from the budget, okay? Or better still, we will look at it from the category table, okay? So basically what we want to do is do a lookup using Power Query that will bring the corresponding type into the actual table. And then we'll use that column to be able to negate the expenses, right? So what we are going to do is I'll come to home and then I'll do what we call merging. So merging will do a lookup from the category table and then bring the corresponding column that I am interested in, which is type. So I'll go to merge queries, okay, and then I am going to merge this with category, right? So the common lookup column here is category and category. So I'm going to bring all left outer, matching all from the second, okay. Then I'll go ahead and then click OK. Right, so this gives me a table, but if I expand, right, this table basically brings all the columns from the category table. So what I'm interested in is only the type, whether it is income or expense. I'll choose to not bring the original column, so I'll uncheck this and then I'll click OK. Okay, so you notice that this is like a lookup. I have my expense and then I have my income over here. Now we can take advantage of this and then create a new column that will negate all the expenses and then let the income lines also remain positive or absolute. We can do that in Power Query. So we can go to add column, okay, and then we are going to create a custom column. So over here, I'm going to call this amount 2. So basically, we are going to say that if the type that I have is equal to expense, okay, then take the original amount, okay, and then multiply by -1, okay, so, or else bring the original amount, right? So this is going to negate all the expenses and then let the income remain positive. So I'll click OK. So we have something like this. Very important that you check and be sure that you formatted it properly. So this is going to be decimal. Okay, we'll do the same thing for our budget. So we'll come to our budget. Now I choose to let this remain the original amount. You could delete it, right? And then use this from this point. But I'll let this remain because sometimes the visualization using absolute values will make it easier on some of the charts, right? So let's take note that amount 2 is the one that has the signs, and then the amount is the absolute values. Okay, I'll do same for budget because in budget, I already have a type column here. So I'll just go straight into my custom column. Okay, so this custom column, I'm going to call on 2 and then write the same M code. Okay, so if type is equal to expense, you know, M code is case sensitive, so you need to maintain. Okay, then take amount and then multiply this by -1, else return the original amount. Okay, so this is for the budget as well. Okay, so I have this for the budget as well, just to be sure. So I'll go down. Okay, so we have, so basically we worked on our budget, right? We have our type in there, we have our category. Now, if you notice in the final dashboard, we're able to break down by month, right? To be able to break down by month, you need a calendar table. So that calendar table is going to come from a new query. So we'll create from a blank query. Now, basically, what has to be done is we want to create a series of dates from 1st January to 31st December, right? It covers every month, every day in the year. Okay, so that we know that we have every date in there to work with. So we are going to use a custom code, M code. Basically, what it does is it stamps the first date that we budgeted, which is from the budget, and then goes all the way to the latest entry in the actual, so that we have a full range of our dates. So we are going to use number.from, okay, then list.main, which is another function. What it does is that it scans and then brings the minimum date, right? From our two tables, the earliest date we did anything was budgeting, which was on the 1st, right? So I'll take this from the budget, and then the column is date, right? So I'll close my bracket for number.from. Right? So basically what this is doing is that it's stamping the beginning dates in our budget table. I'll bring 2 dots to generate the series of dates, and then paste what I copied, which is on the left side, to the right. Now, because I want this to go all the way to the end, okay, instead of list.min, I'm going to make this list.max. Okay, so I have my budget date here, but the budget date we have here is 1st December. So I'm going to switch this to actual, okay, which is likely going to go beyond 1st of December. So this is actual date, okay. So number.from, the left side gives me the minimum, and then the right side gives me the maximum. Then I'm creating a series, right? So I'll bring this in curly brackets, okay, and then I'll press enter. So this gives me a list. When you do it this way, you know you have a reliable timeline, okay. So I'll convert this into a table, and then I'll come here. So this is our primary column. If I convert this into a date, you notice that it starts all the way from 1st January to 31st December, right? Usually I like to view the column profile. You have 365 days over there, right? Just to be sure you're on the right path. So this is going to be my dates, right? Then from this point, depending on the slicer that you are going to use, in our case, we use the month slicers. If you're going to use year, you can draw the year column from here. If you're going to use month, you can draw the month column from here. So for us, we are going to just do the month parts. So I'll come to add column, use the date, and then extract the month value. So this initial one gives me 1 to 12, right? Which we are going to use to sort our month names. And then I'll come here and then draw the name of the month. Okay, so this gives me January to December, right? I'll prefer this to be abbreviated. So I'll select the month name, come to transform, okay, and then extract just the first 3 characters. Okay, so that it's easier on my slices. Okay, so this completes our calendar table. Right. So if you've been following, what we've basically done is we are the Power Query stage. We've modified our data, shaped it in a way that will make it easier for us to connect the tables and then break them down, right? So these are 2 fact tables, actual and budget. Then our slices are going to come from category and calendar, right? So next stop, we are going to Power Pivot. But before we do that, we need to close and load all that we've done. So I'll come, close and load to, right? The second option. So it takes a while to load, and I'll create a connection and then add this to the data model. Okay, so I'll click and then add this to the data model. So what basically is going to happen is it will load and then take all the 4 tables into the data models, the data model. So these are my queries. Now, for some of you, you don't, if I come to home, okay, and then I come to data, the first thing you notice under data tools is this lemon cube, okay. So this is what activates the data model if you have not used Power Pivot before. Okay, so if you haven't used it before, you come to data, and then this lemon cube brings you the data model. Okay, so I'm going to activate this. So ideally, when you activate it, it should bring a pop-up. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so Crypto, please give me a minute. Let me restart this. I expect the power pivot to pop up, but it appears. So please give me a minute. Let me fix this.
That
Okay.
is okay. Yeah. If anyone has a question, you can type them in the chat box, and then Bernard will answer them after. I've only seen one question.
So while I fix this, if the question is something I can answer, you can read it.
Yes, yes. The question comes from Jose. Jose is asking why most financial modeling works in Excel and not in Power BI.
Okay, so to answer that question, I think financial modeling is based on the flexible grid. Okay, you know, Excel is made up of cells. The grid system in Excel allows you to lay out your assumptions and your drivers and then link them up, make changes, right? So that architecture in Excel, okay, it makes it easy for you to create your assumptions and all those things. So the Power BI doesn't really have the grid system, the cell row system, right? But there's a way to get it done. I know some MVPs. Bill has a book, Create Your Financial Model in Power BI. So as it evolves, I'm sure people will be able to use Power BI to create financial models. In fact, you can create a full financial statement, income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet in Power BI, right? So I'm back here, I've restarted. I just want to be sure why this has decided not to work.
Something always goes wrong in a presentation, so take your time.
Yeah, so let me check my add-ins.
In the meantime, there's a question from Ahmed. He is asking, is Excel more powerful than Power BI, and how does it relate to ODBC formats?
Is Excel more powerful than Power BI? My answer is it depends. It depends on what you are doing with it, right? In fact, that question has been asked several times. So you have things that Excel can do. The fact that Power Query is present in both makes it similar in terms of getting data. We also have DAX in both, right? Like I mentioned earlier in my slide, what makes it different is the option or the possibility to publish what you have done online and then collaborate with your colleagues. Okay, so Power BI service is a very powerful space where after doing your report, you can collaborate, okay, get it in a workspace where people can plug into, and then you can create your reports from there, right? From that angle, I think Power BI is strong. It has those extra visuals as well. And now these days, the fact that it sits on Fabric, okay, makes it even more powerful, especially in the data analytics, data science realm. Excel is a good old tool for calculating and modeling. In fact, no tool does it better, right? Because Excel's grade is granular, cell approach calculations, right? So I would not say one is powerful over the other. I feel it depends on what you are using it for. Okay, so that is my answer to that. In terms of the ODBC, I think Power BI is a bit more stable, at least from what I have experienced. Excel also has its own issues with that. But if you are in a very stable environment, both should work comfortably with that source.
Yeah. Good answer, good answer.
Of all these, Power BI Pivot has decided not to open up on my Excel. Maybe I've been using it too much. It's surprising, honestly speaking. Okay, I'm trying one last option. I don't really want to restart the machine because that would, yeah. So please give me a minute. If there are any more questions, I can answer.
Yeah, people, you can type a question, you can raise your hand, I'll unmute you. So I think the part that was remaining was for you to create the pivot table and also the dashboard.
But in the dashboard, yes, but I need to go into Power Pivot and then connect the data model, right?
Okay.
I think people need to know how that works.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll probably be forced to walk through the final output. So I have forced shut down Excel.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start this again and then see if it kicks in. Great, it's back now.
Okay.
It happens. So let me go to where I was. Okay.
You can share your screen again.
Okay, so people, pardon me, this is what I was looking for. Sometimes this tool can play games, but it's probably because I use it a lot. So this is Power Pivot. I was saying that to activate it, you come here and then you launch it from here for the first time. It should pop up Power Pivot. Okay. Once you close it, this tab now sits on your tab, on your command tabs, right? So from what we've done so far, if I go to manage, okay, it opens up that Power Pivot environment. Okay, so we loaded all our queries over here, and we now see that our tables, our actual budget category and calendar are here, right? Now, this is the data view. We are here to connect the tables. Okay, so we'll go to the diagram view, and then over here, you see that all the tables are here. This is our fact table because we can create calculations from here. This is another fact table. This is our budget. And then we have our category here, and then we have our calendar here, right? So usually we arrange it this way to create something we call a star schema, right? So from this point, we can connect the tables, I must say. Okay, so if I take actual, I have category here, right? So by doing this, I'm avoiding any lookup situation. So I have a one-to-many. It just means that when I'm in a pivot table, I can get these two tables to give me a report or a summary, right? I'll do same for calendar. So I have dates, and then I have this over here, okay? And then this is also going to connect to this category, okay? And then this, my date here, will connect to this date over here, right? So in the end, all these four tables are going to work together, okay, to give us our final output, right? In fact, when you are here, you could directly exit with a pivot table, right? So that is possible. But once we've created this, I want to show you how you can directly bring in what we call measures, right? So I'm going to create a calculation sheet. So the calculation sheet, if you look at the final workbook, so if you look at the final workbook, we have actual, budgets, variance. All the numbers that you see on the dashboard, right? So this is the actual measure. This is the budget measure. This is the variance, right? these are the numbers we've used throughout the dashboard. So we are going to calculate these from the data model, and then we'll use it for the rest of our visualization. Right. So next up, we are going to create our DAX measures. Now to do that, we can do it in Power Pivot. Right. So Power Pivot. So I'll come to measures and then create a new measure. Right. Usually, if you want your measures to stay in a table, you can dedicate a particular table. But because I've lost some time, I'm going to go straight and then keep it in the default table, which is actual. So I'll name this actual, come here, and then sum, okay, actual amount 2. Remember, this is the one that has the signs, right? So this, I'm going to format using 1000 separator, 0 decimal place. So this is the calculation for actual. So I'll do that. I'll now create for budget. So again, I'm going to put the budget calculation over here. So it's going to be a sum of the budget amount 2, right? I'll close this. You can format it here, 1000 separator, 0 decimal place. Check the formula to be sure everything is fine. Right, notice if you have a situation like this, right, it means we forgot to format the amount column in Power Query. Okay, so normally if you have an error like this, I can go ahead and accept this, but it means that you have to go back to Power Query, which gives you a new learning. How do you go back to Power Query? So under data, you can go to queries and connections. Okay, if you make any mistake or any omissions, what we basically did is we didn't format the budget column, the one that we extracted. Okay, so we left it at ABC123. Right. So if I come here and I format it properly, this should be fine. And then I'll close and load. Because they are all connected, it should now correct whatever error that was. So we're creating our measures. I'll come back with Power Pivot, measures, right? Manage measures to be sure that this is now working. So if I come here, you realize that if I now check this formula, everything is fine. And I'll click OK. Now, the last one we are going to create is the variance. So I'll create the variance. So variance here is going to be what I have calculated the measure budget minus actual. I mean, these days it depends on the context. So for our purpose, we would make it budget minus actual. And then we'll format this as well. And then I have this. I'll close. So now I have 3 measures, which I'm going to use for my visuals and my calculations and everything. If you want to use pivot tables to draw these measures, it's pretty simple. You can go to Insert, okay, Pivot Table from the data model, right? So if I do this, I can put this in an existing worksheet, okay? Now you notice that all my measures are here, the actual, the budget, and then the variance, right? So if I check actual, this gives me 7162, which is the net position, okay? If you don't want to use pivot tables and you want it as a direct calculation in a cell, you can use cube formulas. Okay, so I'm just giving you an alternative that you can use cube formula to draw the same calculation that you have done by going into the data model, okay, and then you bring a comma. Then you can go into the measures that you have created. We've created 3 measures, actual, budget, and variance, and then just call your actual calculation. Okay, so this is another method, right? The reason we like this is it behaves like regular Excel formulas. I can add slices, modify it, and all that, right? You know, pivot tables are a bit static. You can insert and all that. So I've done a lot of case studies on cube values, but I'm not going to use cube values for this. We are going to use simple pivot tables for this. So normally what you do is, because you've drawn actual, I'm going to paste this here and then substitute the actual for budget. Okay, so this is the budget. Okay, then I'll repeat for the variance. So I'll paste this here. and then I'll repeat this for variance, right? So if you look at what we are doing, these calculations represent the actual budget and variance calculations that we have done, right? Now, from this point, we can now create the staging for all the visuals that we have. If you look here, this is the spark line. The spark line basically is comparing our actual net position by a month, right? So the pivot table will be a month on the row side, okay, and your actual values in the value side. So if you like, you can copy this existing pivot table. I don't normally recommend putting pivot tables too close to each other. Ideally, you should place them in one worksheet so that when it updates, you have room to handle the extra columns or rows that are coming in. But for our purpose, I think this arrangement will do. So what we are going to do is we want to analyze our actual. So this is our actual, but break this down by calendar, right? So calendar has month names. Remember, we put in month names to be able to break this down for us. So I have January to December, right? Now, normally when you pass through Power Query and the data model, it is likely that your month names may not be sorted chronologically. By default, the behavior is going to sort it alphabetically. Okay, so if it happens like that, you just have to go back to the data model, okay, and then sort it properly using the month value column that you brought in. Okay, so I'll come to the month table. This is what I want to sort. Okay, so the month name, and then I'll sort this by the month values. That is a column that gave us the 1 to 12. And then I'll click OK. Okay, so when it happens to you, this is how you resolve it. Now, if I close my Power Pivots, you should have this sorted chronologically now. Now, please understand that what we are doing is we want to create a staging for our spark line where we want all the 12 months to be present. Okay, but you can't create spark lines on pivot tables directly. So what we normally do is that we create a mirror. Okay, a mirror means you are creating a copy of what you have, okay, over here. So I'll right click and then move this to the right. Normally when you do that and you release, you have the option to copy these here as values only, right? Now, the reason I'm doing this is when it comes to the spark lines, I want all these to be present every time, okay? So while this pivot table is collapsing and expanding, right, my 12 months will be looking up the actual values from the pivot tables. That way, I'm sure that I have the right corresponding values. Okay, so I'm going to look up using either XLOOKUP or index match. I think index match brings everybody together for those who are using old and new versions. So for index, we are looking for the values that I have here in L. Okay, that is my result. And then I'm going to match the months. So I'll take the lookup value here and then match it with the month over here. Normally, if you have to select every column, all the column, ensure that you don't have anything below, okay, so that it doesn't interrupt your lookup. So basically, what it's going to give me is just the output for each month. Okay, so this is what we are going to use to stage our spark line. And then once we are done, I can now create the staging for the comparison of actual and budget, right? Again, use the month names, and then the values will be actual and budget, right? So the staging for this, I'm going to copy this pivot table, okay, paste this here, basically recycling. So I'll just come to the field list. I already have actual, so I'm going to add the budget calculation to this. Okay, so this will now give me, now you have all these 700 because if you look at the calculation that we had over here, if you subtract the income, the expenses from the income, right, our net position should be 700 throughout, right? Let's say that is your savings target every month. Okay, so that is how come you have the budget lines showing that way. When you slice, you get the real values. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, the last staging that we are going to do is for the top 5. So this is the top income and expenses. Okay, so for this, I'm going to copy and then paste this. Okay, so I'll edit my field list. So instead of month name, I'm going to have category over here. Okay, and then I'll take off my budget. Okay, now here I have negative and positive numbers. Okay, so if you look at this closely, that was the reason we created this original amount. Okay, so instead of using the FX actual, I'm going to use this original amount so that we have all the numbers, income and expenses, as absolute numbers. That way, when we draw our top 5, right, we have the highest top 5 expenses. Okay, to get the top 5, we basically would right click any label here. Okay, and then filter top 10, and then I would edit this to 5, and I have something like this. Right. So if I sort this, now you notice that I have my top income lines and then followed by my expense lines. Right. There are several ways to do this, but for the purposes of that, when we slice, it will bring up only the expenses, right? As you noticed here. So if I do only expenses, I get the top 5 expenses. If I do only income, I get the top income lines. Together, I get a mix of top 3 and then the top 2 income lines and then my expenses, right? So we have finished the staging. Because I lost some time, I don't know how much time I have. What we are going to do next was actually the dashboard. And I don't know if I don't have enough time, I'll probably just use the final product to walk us through how we connected the visuals and then maybe show you how to connect it to Power BI.
You can add another like 15 or so minutes to create a dashboard. Is that enough, or how many more minutes do you need?
15 minutes is fine. Let's see how we can create an express dashboard in 15 minutes. So
yes.
People, let's come along. Yes, so this is my calculation sheet. So let me call it calculations, and then we'll quickly insert a dashboard sheet. Okay, so here are my tricks for creating a dashboard. I normally like to design in dark mode for a reason. The contrast is better. So the first that you need to pay attention to are the margins. So I have A, E, I, M, Q, right? Normally it's easy on the eye if you put in margins before you do any other thing. Creating dashboards is not cast in stone. You can modify as you go, right? So the A, E, I, M, Q, I'm going to select A, E, I, M, Q, right? Reduce the column width to 2, Alt H O W. That's a shortcut, right? So I reduce this to 2, okay? And then once I have this, I can now start my mockup, right? So the mockup basically is to mark out the areas where you'll be placing each visual, right? So first one is from B6 to D8. So I'll take B6 to D8, normally puts border lines around here. So outside border lines. Okay, then from here, I know the rest is going to be like this. So F4 will repeat your last action. Okay, so these are the boxes for actual budget variance. And then this is my spark line. Okay, then if you come here, you notice that the trend takes B12 to H23. So B12 to H23 is the staging for this. So Alt, let me even use the F4 instead to move faster. So this is the F4. So F4 basically repeats your last action, right? So normally I do the mockup to give an idea where I'm placing each visual. Then my slices will come in here. Okay, so these are going to be the spaces for my slices. And then the last one fits right here. When you do it like this, it's easy. Now, you can now take off the white background and then bring in your dark mode. Now, the color that I use normally is in this, in the old office theme. Okay, so if I change this to the old office theme, the color here, which is a bit, it's a gray color. It's not too dark. It's not too bright, right? So this is what I normally use. Okay, so this is now going to give you the background for your dashboard. Once this is selected, you can format the font white, okay, and then set the font type. So my font type is Red Hat Display. Okay, so this way you don't have to worry about changing colors and all that. Now, if you look at the dashboard, these are shapes. Okay, so I have these three shapes. I have a spark line, and then I have my objects, my charts, and my slices. So let's now put these shapes in. So first, I will insert my shapes, draw over the mockup, right? That's why you did a mockup. Usually when you are drawing this, hold the Alt key so that it can just snap to the grid, right? To make it easier. So this one, I am going to fill with a darker shade, the next level. Okay, take off my outline, so no outline. Shape effects, I'm going to use the shadow. Okay, let me even go to more shadow options. Use this shadow here, and then the shadow color, I'm going to make this bright one. So it gives us that 3D effect. Okay. Once you've created the first one, you could just slide this, okay, for the second and then the third. Makes it easier, right? So basically, by doing this, you can now feed these shapes with your calculations at the back, right? So here, select the first object, which is the shape, the first shape, okay? Stand in the formula bar, put in an equal sign, go to my calculations, right? What I'm doing here is I'm feeding this actual, right? Please, if you are doing this and you have get pivot data enabled, right, you get some errors. So for those who will be practicing, make sure generate get pivot data is off. Otherwise, you can't reference it directly into the shape. Now, for a bit of visibility, the font that I normally use for numbers in objects is Berlin Sun, right? So if you set this to 28, okay, so Berlin Sun FB, okay, so if I make this white, you realize that it's a bit more elegant, right? So this is for my actual. I will repeat the same process for budgets. So I have this, and then I have that for the variance. Okay, because I've done this already, I can just double tap on the format painter, touch this and touch that, and then I'm done with this. Okay, for the spark line, what we are going to do is we'll stand in the first cell. Okay, we want to insert the spark line in this first cell, and then when we are done, we'll merge it. So I'm standing in the first cell, go to insert spark line. We are using the column. Okay, so I'll do this. My data range is at the back. So I'll come here, come to my calculations, and then highlight this range. That's why we created this. We could have done it directly on the pivot table. Okay, so this is going to be my spark line. It's just stuck in the top left corner. So once you have this, you can highlight the whole of this and then merge it to make it a bit bigger. Right, so then you can put in some colors. So in the spark line color, you have the option to set the high points. So this is green. Sorry, I missed that. So the low points rather should be red. And then the high points should be green. Okay, you can modify as you want. Right. So that is for our spark line. Okay, now for the chart, we just have to insert first on this one. So I'll insert a pivot chart on this. Okay, I'm going to use the one line with markers. So we have something like this. Usually, when you are designing pivot charts, please remove the noise. Okay, the noise here will be things that distract. So normally, you can take off all the filled buttons. Okay, the y-axis can go off. Okay, and take off the grid lines. Right, I'll place this at the bottom, so this will leave more space. Right, for the rest of the charts, I can come, cut this, and then bring this into the dashboard space. Doing this so that I can set it to blend with my background. Okay, so I have something like this. Okay, so this is a space that we have for our chart. Okay, the format we are going to do is to make this a no fill, right? And then format this white, right? So then you can go ahead and then modify the lines. So this, I'm going to make this a bit thinner so that I have the contrast between the line and the marker. I'll do same for this. Okay, make this a bit thinner. In the end, it was blue and white, but I'll skip that because that one is easy to do. Okay, so we have something like this. Once I'm done, I can take off my formats, shape outline, and then add a little shadow to this to make it a bit more present. So I have something like this. Then for my charts, the donut chart, okay, I already have the staging here. So this is a regular donut chart. So I'll insert a donut chart from this side. Okay, I'll click OK. We'll remove the noise. So the field list or field buttons, they are going to go off. Take off the total. Okay, and then bring this over here. So I'll paste this over here. So holding the Alt key, I can now put this in place. Now take off my shape fill. Okay, and then while I'm here, make the font white. Right. For borders, if I select the whole donut, I can take off the border line. Okay, so no outline for this. Okay. Now I like this to be a bit bigger. So Control-1. If I reduce this to about 65, I have something like this. Right. In our original display, when you have this chart, you can go through some themes. Okay, so in the design, we have some colors. I like this one. Okay, it makes it easy to blend in with a dark background. Right. So if I have this, I can format my shape outline and then take off my border lines. Unfortunately, it came back again. So I'll do this. So that will complete. And to make it a bit brighter, you can make this part of the slicer white. Okay, even though it's dark mode, you can brighten it up a bit. Right. So this is what we used. How many minutes more? I'm done with the slicer.
Like 3 more minutes.
Okay, so 3 more minutes. I hope we have some space for questions though. So let me now bring in this. Yes. So let me bring in the slicer. For the slicer, you can insert it in any of the pivot tables. So I will insert the slicer in any of the pivot tables. Now, if you go to all, normally we insert a slicer from the dimension tables, right? So I have my month name, I have my category, and then I have my type. These are the three slicers we used. Okay, so I'll select all these holding control, cut, come to my dashboard, and then paste this, paste everything. Okay, so I'll quickly arrange this. So this is going to be down here. My month names are down here, right? For slicers, you can modify them. So this is going to be split into 2 columns, right? So I'll put this over here. And then my category is going to be here. Okay. And then I have my months, which I'm going to split into 12 months also here, right? Normally, when you do this, you can stretch this a bit to cover that whole length, that's the width that you allowed for this, right? Now, there's a very easy way to format your slices. Okay. What you basically need to do is to make it agree with the theme that you have. You can duplicate any of the slices. Okay, let's name this Finex. So for my whole slicer, okay, I just want the background to take the same background as the screen, as the dashboard, right? So that color, I hope I've saved the hex code. Let me see what, yeah. So this is the hex code for the background, right? So under the whole slicer, I'm going to use that, right? I'll take off the borders, okay? And then I'll make the font Berlin Sun. Okay, so just give me a minute. Let me choose this directly. Copy this. And then make the font white. So this is for the background, right? For the header, we are going to use the same font, Berlin Sun. Okay, make the font white. The borderline is going to be white. And then we have this, okay. And then for the selected item with data, which are the real buttons, right? I'll fill them with this blue. I'll make the font white. And then the font type is also going to be Berlin Sun. Select this. For borders, there will be no borders. And then the fill, I've dealt with that already. And I'll click OK. Right. So if I OK this, and then I select these three slices, okay, this is now how my slides are. This is how it's going to appear. Okay, so that is the final thing you need to do is just put in your headers, okay, and then take off the markers that you started with. Okay, so Alt HBN to take off the border lines. Then you put in your borders. Now, after you created this, the next step was to go to Power BI and then export the data model. That is, if you wanted to have the same data model, your calculations, your DAX, and all those things. Okay, so maybe because of time, another day, another session, I would come in and then demo how we can export this into Power BI and then probably enhance the visuals a bit and then take it to PowerPoint. But see, apart from the H, you picked up some lessons. The basic idea is how we can use Power Query, Power Pivot, DAX to create an interactive dashboard like this with all the slices and charts to be able to analyze our actual end budget. So I hope I made use of the last 15 minutes. Thank you for the extra time, Crispo.
Thank you for honoring time. And that was quick. I've never seen somebody make a dashboard that quick, and it came out light.
Yeah.
Looks like you have done it 1,001 times.
Well, thankfully, this part comes easy, so thank God it happened. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or you can type. I saw Victor. I don't know where Victor is. Victor must have. Let me see. There's somebody who has raised their hand. Michael. Michael, you can unmute yourself and then you can ask your question. Michael, or you can type. You can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Sorry, I was on mute. Eh?
Yes, yes.
Am I clear now? Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. That presentation was quite nice. I think I've watched a number of your presentations on YouTube. This is a nice presentation. My challenge here was how you put in the expense and the income together so that you can easily exchange the two within the slicer. I know that might take time, but that was one area I noted. But otherwise, it's a nice presentation. Thank you, Crispo, for putting this together, and for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, good question.
Well, the bit that I didn't do is you notice that this is the net position, and we gave the slicer to be able to bring out only income and expense. Normally, when you bring the slicer from a data model, you need to connect, right? So if you connect this, okay, to your pivot tables. So ideally, you should name your pivot tables, right? So this is pivot table 1, pivot table 2. These represent the pivot tables that we started with. Okay, so if I connect them to the pivot tables, I should now have the income and expense slices breaking down the calculations, right? So if I click only income, this is my income, right? You realize that it now filters it and gives me only the income lines, right? And then if I choose expense, these are my expenses, right? If you don't want the negative numbers, you can run an absolute function around this to give you absolute numbers. So if you don't select any, then you have the net position, right? So to answer the question, the filter is here, expense or income. Once you connect it to the pivot tables, it should be able to give you only income and only expense.
I think the question Michael was asking, if I got it right, is how do you create that slicer? Is this something that you can create quickly, or is this something that will take time?
The income, or is this one?
Yes, the one that has both income and expenses.
Okay, I did it. Maybe it was too fast. So,
okay.
You know, when you're, yes, so in a pivot table, once you click insert and then you go to slicer, okay, you actually have the list of all the tables.
Okay.
Right. Remember, that's why we drew the dimension table category, right? Okay. So the type column, which basically contains income and expense, is where we drew the slicer from.
Okay.
Right. And that's what I carried to the front and connected.
Okay. I hope it's clear, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. John is asking, how can we add ERs in the slicers? I think that's easy. I think you can show that. Like the slicer that has all the month, how can you add ERs?
Please say that. Oh, okay. So if you want to add years, then remember when we're creating the queries, okay, in the calendar table, right, when we created our primary column, okay, we can generate any date attribute from here, right? So if I come to dates, sorry, if I come to add column, right, in a dates icon, I can draw year from here, right? So this year now is part of my calendar table, which I can now draw the slicer from, okay? So if I close and load this, and that's the beautiful thing about these tools is once they work together, they are linked. You make changes in a Power Query, it reflects in the rest. So at this point, if I come to my pivot tables and I'm inserting a slicer, if I don't even need to stand in the pivot table to insert a slicer, I can come insert a slicer directly from the data model. Okay, when I open up, right, in the calendar, I should have year now. Okay, so year has now popped up for selection, right? The reason year wasn't relevant in this case study is this is just an annual budget. But if you have several years, it would have popped up here, right, for you to choose the particular year. So it's just a case of adding a column in the query to draw a year from the primary date column, and then you are good.
Okay. Ahmed is asking for a one-on-one. I don't know whether you want to share your contact details for somebody who like a one-on-one consultation. He has some accounting receivable data and you'd like to make a dashboard.
Okay, so I think we have quarterly sessions, our group sessions at Finance Skills Hub comes off in July. So
Okay.
Ahmed, yes, so you can go to financeskillshub.apply and then you can join our, so financeskillshub.apply, right? We go into details, right? So the finance school will start in July. Normally, when we give you the tools, you can come and if you have specific case studies, you can bring it to class and then we'll look at it. So please apply and then we'll get back to you. Okay.
Victor, you are a presenter. You have to say something. I don't know whether Victor can hear me. You can unmute yourself and say something. And anyone else who has a question can ask.
Hey, hello, Crispo. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Since you forced me to talk. Say hi, Bernard.
We love to hear your voice.
Okay, so this is my real brother from West Africa.
Yes.
I already joked that once you have Obeng, you're definitely going to have, cube functions. The two of them are inseparable, So, but I mean, excellent presentation as expected. Let me put it that way, and it's really great what you do. And well, I'll say keep it up. We know where we can tell ourselves some other things. So it was a pleasure, spending this time with you. So
yeah,
that's all I would say. Well done.
Thank you for the encouragement. Bernard, you had something to say?
Yes, Victor, I call him Prof because we share a lot of notes. He calls me when I'm sleeping, the same thing with him too. So I'm happy to know that he's part of the call. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other question. Owusu is testifying on the amazing sessions on Finex school. I think I also need to join the school. I'll see what I can do. And also your book. Looking forward to reading your book. And I don't know whether there's something else, but I'm honored that you came. I'm honored that you have done some presentation. I've learned a couple of things and looking forward to adding them in my financial model.
Thank you so much for hosting me. There's a link to the book. So data modeling with Excel, it covers all these tools in details with cube functions as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll link up.
True. Boniface Otieno is saying, hi Bernard, thanks for presentation. Kindly share the address on the chat for the July cohort. I think they have to go to your website and register. Or
yes. So it's
Boniface, you want to ask the question? I think I can make you a presenter if you want to ask the question, because I don't get his question. Me making him a presenter, maybe he can ask. Boniface, you are a presenter now. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Crispo, for bringing Bernard. Bernard, thanks so much for the presentation. I've learned a lot on the Power Query, Power Pivot, and it's something that I would like to put into practice. You mentioned that also in your there will be something happening in July. Maybe in that class, maybe I believe, because this was just like limited for the 1 hour for the time that we had, but maybe in your class next in July, we could explore more. So that's what I was asking, how I can join. I saw there's another team member who had also asked, and you typed it so fast, so I missed it. So I just want to know the process if I want in case to join the class in July. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, Boniface. Maybe you can repeat how people to join. Yeah.
Yes, so financeskillshub.com/apply. So financeskillshub.com Yes, thank you. So once you apply, we'll get back to you with next steps.